Mark will share a little bit about his family history here, but we got married in 2000, so, and he grew up here, so this is it's a blessing just to be here and be able to share in this. And we started transitioning the farm to organic right after we got married. It gradually happened, and have tried to do the best we can with what we've been given to use while we're on this earth. And we just think that's the reason to go organic, really, is to be good stewards of what we've been allowed to use while we're living. We have the grain farm, which Mark can share more about that. That's more his big area, and like semi-loads of organic grains that go different places. And then we have a vegetable production here, which is not, does anybody have a high tunnel? Or have, okay. Where do you live?
Just Sully County.
Okay, okay. And so what do you grow? What do you grow?
Oh, tomatoes, pumpkins.
Okay.
Squash.
Do you have more than one high tunnel?
I have two. I do container gardening in one, and then in the soil.
Nice, nice. Yeah.
Just put it up this year through the NRCS grant.
Awesome. Okay. And that's what we did. This high tunnel, we had an NRCS grant in 11, 12, 13. Yeah. Somewhere in there. Oh, it was the year of the big storm Atlas out that West River killed all the cattle. It was that year. We had it up. It was plastic ends. You know, we put up the kit, plastic ends too, and it shredded the whole thing because of the 70-mile-an-hour winds. We're still finding pieces of that plastic in our fields.
You can imagine what it sounds like to shake a 90-foot rug in the wind. That's what we listened to.
Over and over and over in our house, which is a bit over this way. Anyway, I wish I had 3 smaller ones so I could rotate. We don't do this the way bigger growers might do. It's just kind of our garden in there. And then 4 years ago, because of some health issues, I started more with raised beds and really need a lot of help. I'm not getting out on the ground to plant and weed and that kind of thing. And this is our niece Leah and her family. They moved here a year ago, and we're kind of trying to pass the baton at a minimum with the physical labor, and hopefully at some point management too. So this is Leah. So she knows just about everything now too around here. And we grow vegetables and sell to like a local restaurant or to Oahe Child Development, which is the Head Start program in Pierre. They buy about 20 pounds of flour a month. They make all of about half of their food is made from scratch, which is wonderful. And anybody else that stops. And then I kind of got burned out on trying to go to the farmer's market, and it's been my dream to just have a little farm store right here. And there are plenty of people that live out here. When Mark and I got married, there were 8 mailboxes at the corner. There are 23 now. And the boat ramp is down here, so you got traffic, and Spring Creek and Cow Creek. And more people are building out here all the time. So I'm good with just being here and growing vegetables. Before we do more of a walkabout on the farm, we'll take a walk through the high tunnel and just realize it's end of the season. Some things aren't looking too great, but we still have a lot of good vegetables growing here. And we have pumpkins and squash and other things growing out in the fields around us too, on the edges of the fields. Okay? I will say that we, if anybody's had a high tunnel, or now that you're new to it, you're going to experience, if you haven't already, what's called high tunnel fatigue. There was a great workshop a year or two ago that we went to at one of the gatherings. I don't remember where it was, and it's true. After about 7 or 8 years, things don't grow in there as well as they used to. And part of it is just the soil kind of gets depleted, even though we have tried to amend it to a degree, So there are also in the farm stand here, there's some pictures. We try to have pictures of green things growing and products because we do host educational groups too. And we've had a culinary group here, like in March. Well, everything's brown. It's hard to believe that when they look around, like, really, this all makes something,
Yeah.
turns into something beautiful. And so there's some pictures in there, but a couple of the pictures would show you that we do try to we have in the past planted the whole thing to either buckwheat or a radish turnip clover mix, and then just till that in and rye.
Which is
well, that was the most recent one. We would plant the whole thing, then it became apparent that it was really wiser to just keep our paths and always just grow in the same spots, even though we rotate crops. Welcome. Hi. And last year, Leah planted rye seed, and it was wonderful because we hosted a small event here in April, this last spring. Again, it's very brown out here, but there were some kid activities, and it wasn't a real pleasant day outside. And so they actually set some of the kid activities up in there, and it was like we had bits of lawn because the rye was just gorgeous in there. So there might be, you'll see some residual. Where is Leah? Yeah. Do you want to come up here? That's okay. Well, so Leah planted the rye, and then it grew up beautifully. She watered it, of course, and then it grew up beautifully, and then we burned it down by putting plastic on it, right? We put black plastic on it for the burn down. And yeah, you want to describe what you think that looked like? And
yeah, so
Sorry,
no,
we're recording.
You're good.
You put that in your face.
Yeah, so when we put the black plastic down, and now it looks like, I don't know, I feel like it looks like seaweed. Like, yeah, it burned down really nice in the black, well, I don't know, 2 weeks, maybe not even, 10 days to 2 weeks. And we lifted it up, and it was like yellowish, so we just left it there. But then we planted into it. We didn't turn it in. We just left it there as kind of a weed deterrent, and it's been there all summer.
now it's degraded quite a bit, but thanks. It's degraded quite a bit, but you will see there's just little clumps of it laying around, and you think, oh, what's that weed residue in there? Why don't they pick that up? Well, it's just more organic matter, so we're gonna leave it in there.
So I really could talk the rest of the morning, and I won't, but I do have a couple points I want to make, and I kind of want to tell you the story a little bit, because so I'm kind of talking about transition, Angela. So do I have 20 minutes, 15 minutes?
I think you have until 11:45 to talk.
Well, okay, but part of that is, and on my farm walk, we could walk down there to that container, which is kind of the operations center for that cat. What you do is you throw it as hard as you can by the tail like this.
Okay, you know that you're not a
I'm not very popular on that.
Cat lovers.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, I would like to start talking about transitioning, but to me, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about you're not organic now and you want to be. That 3-year period, or they call it 3 years, that's the transition time. And did you have something you want to say? Okay, you're going to stand here with me?
I heard you say you wanted me to be.
Well, I just wanted you to get your clock going, make sure I don't But here, my vision is I'll talk a little, and then my farm walk, we could walk down to that container, the operations center, kind of for the drip irrigation, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. It's not much of a walk, and there's not much to see when you get there. I did go out and dig a couple of stalks of corn out of the cornfield. I took one from the neighbors too, just to kind of compare. They're in the back of my truck, just around the corner here. So as far as I'm concerned, our walk could just be through the high tunnel and the back of the truck, and we could talk about corn, whatever. But we can walk out there if you want to. I mean, we're all walkers, right? But transitioning to me is the whole thing. We're still transitioning, in my opinion. Okay. And that's kind of my message. But so if you go back to the 1850s, my great-grandfather was born in Illinois, and he came here in the 1880s, and he was a cowboy, okay? And he was, the story goes, he was in Pierre. They had one hanging in Pierre, and he was part of that bunch that hung the guy, So I mean, I don't know. You hear all kinds of stuff. And then my great-grandfather had the vision to after he had brothers and sisters, and they lived down by the river, straight down there, right along the Missouri River. That's where the ranch was. And he had twin boys, and one of them was my grandpa. And right after they were born in the early 1900s, after everybody had tried to prove up here, and if you start farming and digging around, you'll find places where there's a circle and there's some pieces of tin and metal, and you realize people did come out here and try to live on 160 acres, you know, for a whole year. And they piled up some dirt and hid behind it, and you could be in town like once or twice a year and get cleaned up, but there were some rules. Then they had their 160 acres and all. That didn't cost them anything. But then what do? They realized there wasn't water here. It was all down there by the river. And so he bought a lot of land up here by paying back taxes in the between 01 and 1910, and put together a pretty big ranch. Then, when his sons were young men, and he died in 33, but in the 40s, Corps of Engineers came through and started buying land right here where the dam is. And these guys had, right then, you know, the deal was the rain grew the grass, and the cows ate the grass, and they put the cows on the train, and they were making a living. And then by the end of the 40s, this land was all owned by the government, from where the dam is up to Bismarck, North Dakota, for a wide path, you know, including the river. And all those people had to move out in the 50s because that was going to be flooded. So what I'm trying to say is that we lost a generation there. My grandfather died very young in Mayo Clinic because he went crazy, and they were giving him shock treatments trying to save him. And when I was 7 years old, it was 1958, that's when we moved out here. That's the year the dam was finished and the river came out of its banks and flooded the best land you could find 4 miles. You could go states any direction you wanted to, and there wouldn't be land as good as we filled up and covered with water down there. And then so talk about transitioning. All those guys that lived there, they transitioned and tried to make livings up here, and most of them failed. Willie Cowan succeeded, his family. But anyway, my point is, transition's been going on for a long time. The water filled up the lake, and it started coming out of its banks. The river started to flood the bottom in 1958. That's the summer we moved out here, and I was 7 years old. And we moved right there behind those trees. And there was nothing here. You got to just picture, go all the way back to the oil road where all the mailboxes are. That was a gravel road. And then you look this way, and it was just a sea of grass. There was nothing. There wasn't even a road. Okay, and they cut across, and so we drove to our little hill here across the prairie. It was just nuts. And then back then the county built roads, and they built us 4 miles of road, that gravel road that goes this way, and then and that was like 3 years later. So this land then transitioned from being cow country. My dad had a 3-bottom plow, and he started breaking it up. And there are those that would say that was our first mistake, turning prairie into farm ground, because it didn't work very good. 20 bushel corn was tops because it didn't rain here. All right, so I spent my younger years listening to all those old men that got kicked out along the river and watching them die here and talking bad about the Corps of Engineers, and it was an interesting life. But my mother's generation was kind of displaced. In other words, we came back out here then in 58 and tried to start the whole thing over again. We lived in a basement house, and we farmed, raised sheep, and down in the basement I can show you there's one bedroom that us 3 boys lived in, and one where that's where they're living now. Okay. Anyway, we didn't know we didn't have any money, but we didn't. Went to a 1-room country schoolhouse. But I knew farming was hard work, so I was going to go to college and beat that deal. And I did, and then I went in the Air Force for 20 years and realized that I left the best place in the whole world, right here. So after 20 years in the Air Force, I came back. And it's crazy how God works. The farm was doing okay. Dad had expanded. He had 2,000 acres, but he needed help. And so I brought my family home. My wife left. It was just 95 was a tough year, and I was just watching the farm, trying to be a farmer. You know, I didn't pay any attention when I was a kid, and I came home. I was a retired lieutenant colonel. I thought this is a piece of cake, and I started getting my butt kicked right then, and it hasn't quit. and I'll end with this. Even though, you know, we're organic and it's still South Dakota, and out here it doesn't rain. Now this year was an exception, but 20 bushel corn without Roundup is all you get out here, conventionally. And so we did put, we've got 550 tillable acres, and there's 475 of it is now subsurface drip irrigation. Dad irrigated when I left and went to college. He started irrigating, and so I've got a line coming up the hill, and then we picked it up right here. And that blue container down there is where the water is filtered, and then it goes out to the north and across the road to these fields here. And the drip irrigation looks like this. It's a piece of it comes off the roll flat, but when it's full of water, it looks like a garden hose. Every 22 inches, and that varies, but every 22 inches there's a hole in it called an emitter. It's a high-tech hole, okay? And so the drip line is buried 14 inches below the ground, 40 feet apart.
40 inches.
40 inches apart, I mean. 40 inches apart, 14 inches below the ground, and it runs like that 80 over there on the other side of the container where the millet is windrowed. You know, that's a half-mile long field. So just picture that. There's a half-mile long field. That whole thing is drip tape every 40 inches. This one here. Yeah, there's some land. It's a lot of plastic in your field. All right, but things grow in South Dakota if you water them. So, you know, what can I say? We're learning. I mean, we did that in 19, then 21, and then last year I traded 40 acres for another 175 acres up here. So we're really trying to grow things, but we want it all to be organic, and we want it all. And I'll kind of end with that.
Anything good about what we're doing?
It's a great challenge, but we need people like Angela to help. We really do. I mean, this is a help, but I'm just warning you, there's a few things still wrong out there. But I do want to talk just a second about, we really and truly, when you stop this war on top of the ground with chemicals, you have to start investigating what's going on in the ground, okay? And I know soil health is one of the things that you're wanting to talk about, but there's another transition. You got to become a biologist. I mean, you really do. It is just amazing what I don't know. I can't believe it's just crazy how now we're talking about all the microbes in the soil that are trying to break down the calcium and the phosphorus and the carbon so that you can grow stuff. And pretty soon you got to go back to school. And in the last 5 years we've seen just tons of new products on the market now that do all that. They feed the microbes, they help your fungi, which is at the end of the roots, which helps the roots grow. I'm just telling you, it is a whole new world that we've opened up. And we are all about making that dirt do what God made it to do. It used to. My great-grandfather knows it did. It grew great grass, tall as your chest. The cows ate it and everybody was happy. I mean, we just got to get back to that. And I got a call from a guy in Tennessee, Sparta, Tennessee, and I think it's like a Mennonite colony or something like that, but they've got a co-op going, and they've got some backers in terms of money, and I don't know how he got my name, but he wanted to buy, you know, our wheat, our corn, our everything. So what I do is I take it to Millbank, which is where we have 2 organic seed cleaning places in South Dakota. So right now I'm hauling semi-loads of grain to Millbank. They're cleaning it, putting it in totes, and then they come and do the freight from Millbank to Tennessee. That's an example, okay. Otherwise, I do pay a trucker. We've done quite a bit of wheat business with a flour mill in Colorado, and they have another a satellite in Minnesota, and I hire a trucker to come here and load up his semi and take it out of state. But I just hate paying that bill.
Interestingly, a lot of our corn goes to a Hutterite colony in Montana.
Right, and they pick it up here on the farm and pay the freight to Montana.
But the higher the freight price goes, the more they want to knock down the price that the farmer gets.
So those are 2 pretty good, 3 good examples. Okay, some of it they come here and buy it and pay the freight themselves or haul it themselves. Some of it I do have to pay freight to have it truck further than I can drive overnight. You know what I mean? And then the other is we're finding a new outlet now, really, with the tote thing. We haul it to Millbank, have it cleaned, and then tote it up. And
because we have the fans off so that you can hear me talking, but otherwise we kind of keep the fans going just to keep the air circulating. So how many of you ever been in a high tunnel before? Oh, good for you. That's awesome. So many people don't understand, and I don't know why it got called a high tunnel. That seems like an odd name. I have people say
different from the greenhouse?
It is, because you're supposed to grow in the ground.
Well, Lissa said, turn up the high tower. I'm like,
High tower. Yeah, I get that a lot too. People
or
say high tower.
High tunnel, I mean.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm like, what the
people
heck
do
is-
say
what
high
do you-
tower.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. Hoop house. It's a plastic hoop house. I mentioned that the first year we had it, that the plastic all got ripped off, and then we had to wait another year before we were ready to start again. But then we put a solid end on this end, and on the other end is plexiglass with a walkout door, so that we can. And that and keeping a shade cloth on it has helped immensely. So anyway, let's just walk inside. Then maybe we can be heard a little better. When we do have a subsurface drip irrigation system, but we only do that for certain months of the year because we pay the electric bill for that pump, you know, and you don't want to pay it. You don't want to pay for it when you don't have to. So we kind of pump out of the river from probably June through September sometimes. But we have it shut off already this year because we went ahead and we had plenty of moisture. We didn't really need to.
right, that's the drip tape on the ground there.
But so this is hooked to rural water, to answer your question. It's just hooked to the hydrant. The system can stay in here, but where we pump it from is a different hydrant is all. Yeah. So we think it's interesting. I feel like when we pump out of the river, we have more moss, because we don't really have a good filter on our.
You filter that for your organic.
Well, that's a good point. A person should have the water tested, for that. And so far, I think we're good. Mark used to drink the water out of the reservoir. Growing up, they had a cistern. They pumped, because they had the irrigation system, they pumped water into a cistern. And that's what they drank.
So you just get it tested?
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Anyway, so one of the things we also try to do is continuous planting, or, I can't think of the word I want. Succession planting, thank you, yep. So it's been easier for me to just fool around with some raised beds, and everybody else does the groundwork. That behind you is, it's called New Zealand spinach. Regular spinach just bolts like crazy. You barely get it started and it bolts. Maybe that's because it's too warm in here. That goes till the end of November. Wow. And it's very hardy. It just looks like that the whole time. And we just keep pulling it and picking it, and it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. It's a very meaty. So anyway, there Leah put some onions in and some carrots in, or I think that's carrot or cilantro or something. These are fun. Leah wanted to try these. You have to look at the vines really close. You're welcome to do that too and pick one if you see it. They're little tiny cucumber melon. They look like a little baby watermelon, but they taste like cucumbers. Yeah. Peppers, we do rotate back and forth and try to put the peppers and the tomatoes where they weren't last year. But if I had more than one little tunnel, that's what I would do. I'd put some like just tomatoes in one. Trying to grow your whole garden in here is hard because all the vegetables don't need the same environment. So if you wonder if things get pollinated, we've got bees. They fly in and out of here just.
God's bees, though.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Anyway, we're about ready to tear the cucumbers down because they're looking pretty bad. And I was going to look it up, and I will do it before we part today. Last year, there were 2 different people that came, like USD or SDSU researchers on curcubits in high tunnels and out of. And we have some kind of a fungus here that's kind of unique to just the middle of South Dakota. And it doesn't really hurt the production, but it looks horrible, and I hate it because it doesn't look good. You think, oh, how can these be good if they got this fungus all over them? But we've got good produce. And then we kind of put up a trellising system to get our tomato vines going up. So you're welcome to take a walk around, and then we'll go out the south door because Mark's got some corn plants that he wants to show you the root systems of. And if anybody has any questions, just ask.
Denise, could you talk about your fertilization program? Like do you have anything for soil?
Well, just so Mark will talk about this even with the outdoor, with the larger irrigation system.
Yeah.
When you do this, you can fertigate. You can put.
Okay.
You
I
can
was
put.
wondering if you were putting something in the water.
Yeah,
Okay.
like fish emulsion or yeah.
Gotcha.
Again, some of the workshops that we've been to really promote molasses, like putting more sugar in.
Yep.
And we had a terrible aphid problem in here this year.
Okay.
Never had such a problem.
Did you use molasses in the?
Leah used molasses water. So if you see any like brown, like even on some of the tomato plant, that's some of the residual molasses.
Did you boiler spray that, or did
Yeah, both.
Oh,
Yeah, and banana peels.
Okay.
The pepper plants got hit really hard, and look at them. I mean, they got hit really hard. I thought, oh, we're gonna have to tear these out and start over. Banana peels on the ground, and then Castile soap in a sprayer,
Okay. Yep.
foliar. Yes.
So what do you do like on these where they?
That so we've had grasshoppers horribly. Mark will tell you, growing up, he said like every 4, 5, 6 years, maybe you'd have a bad grasshopper year. We've had 4 bad years in a row with grasshoppers.
So this is from grasshoppers.
They overwinter in here too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're tough. Grasshoppers are really.
I mean, even the conventional farmers,
Oh yeah, conventional. Or,
they
yeah,
can't
grasshoppers
they can't do anything about it.
are-
And we were going to tear those out, but Leah just cut the broccoli. I mean, we've had after the big head of broccoli. Now it's like broccolini. We got all this, and we just ate broccoli again. So, and they look better than they did. So,
It's amazing.
and it's such it takes a village to get this stuff on here. And we've replaced the plastic 3 times in the last 10, 11 years. So I know a lot of people, I think our ground would be better if we took the plastic off annually. A lot of people do that, and you're supposed to do that, but it's too hard on this big thing.
Okay.
So we don't.
Take the whole plastic off. Right. I see what you're saying. Open.
Yeah, and let.
So that
But it's too hard. Yes, we do. Yeah. Right now, there's something about this time of the year, because I end up with chickens in my backyard in my flower beds too, and I hate that. But they get in here, and I don't want them in here.
Right.
So even though we got little fence on the inside, they still find a way to poke through. So yeah, they pick the tomatoes, they scratch holes in the
Yeah, I
ground.
was wondering how you kept your chickens out because we have trouble
Well, do you know Peggy Martin down at?
Yes.
So she's the one that has a better system. It's a tighter mesh, and her fence is about this high in her high tunnels around the edges. Yeah, yeah. So what I was going to say, this is what I'm talking about. This is what's left of the rye,
Okay.
which is kind of neat. But this was all covered. Oh, you have to.
What you use for the mulch?
That just means get the flax planted earlier, because the grass comes late. You just have to get that flax planted early, and then flax will bloom all summer long. And you just love those blooms. You keep thinking they're making seeds, but you're letting those weeds that are going to kill you come up too. So you got to nip it in the bud and put that flax in a windrow and take what you got, and it'll be, you know.
So now that you know that grass seed is there for next year, what will you
I'll plant.
try to?
Well, the main rotation is still the South Dakota standbys. It's corn and beans and wheat, but I've had to change it to corn followed by wheat and then beans. Now that's my main rotation, and because rotary hoe is like the #1 tool for getting those little baby weeds out of corn and getting them out of beans. But if I plant the beans behind the corn, I can't rotary hoe it because those corn stalks are just still in that field, and they gum up the works. So I have to plant corn, and then I plant wheat, and then the problem is growing wheat in corn ground, because when you have, we should have had a bus, but if you go up to these corn fields, you know, last year I had corn out here. I had 10-foot tall corn, and so those corn stalks are out there, and I put chicken manure down. I can go through the list of what we tried to do to put enough fertility out there so that the wheat could grow and the corn stalks could decompose. The corn stalks just suck everything out of the ground while they're decomposing. Now that'll be great the next year, but the wheat has a hard time growing with all that going on in the ground.
Do you use the rotary hoe on the wheat or not?
No, I don't. The wheat, you just plant it thicker than you'd ever believe, and it'll keep the weeds down.
Okay.
And then hopefully you won't have a wet July, because you'll have to windrow it if the weeds come up. Which I did about half the wheat we windrowed this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of grass came up in your flat?
I'll show it to you. I don't know what it is. It looks kind of like bluegrass, but it's taller and it's got a flag on it. But I don't. It just last year was the first time I've ever seen this stuff. So usually with the corn though, we rotary hoe the corn, and again, we get those little weeds that are even in the row with the rotary hoe, and corn has a way of canopying really quick, especially if it's got water. So the corn is usually pretty clean.
Okay.
Pretty clean. Beans not so much. Beans
How
are.
tall do you go with your rotary hoe? Like your last pass? Can you go on the
No. As soon as I'll rotary hoe before the corn is even up if I can.
and that's the last time?
And no, you'll throw one or two out, but if it's an inch or two tall, I'll rotary hoe. But as soon as I can go slow with the cultivator, then I'm. And we've got a Hinniker, which I got from Blaine Schmaltz. He convinced me the Hinniker was the best cultivator to use, and so far I agree with him. It's right, but I didn't mean to get. What am I supposed to do now? Over here. Okay. One of the things I was going to say, the words of that we've been talking about, and you're gonna cringe, but and part of it is my age. But when I came home in '95, and the big word was sustainable. When I first started looking into organic, everybody was talking about we need our agriculture to be sustainable, and it seemed like it meant not depending on chemicals. In other words, doing it God's way, using God's plan here. Getting that soil alive, and I want to get the soil to work, and it needs microbes in there breaking down the carbon, and it needs fungi, and it needs all of that. And really, this is where I truly, it's such a learning thing. But basically, all the guys, there's 3 guys that I deal with. One guy is Jeff Pritchard. He's in Nebraska, and I buy humic from him. I buy, and that's a black stuff. It basically is what helps your soil. It's all an organic product. It's just a dirt is what it is. Looks like ground up charcoal, but he's big with that, and kelp, protein for your plants. And then there's a kid out in Newell, South Dakota, and I buy a fish oil product from him that I can put out through the drip, and it's a 15-1-1 all organic fish fertilizer. And then we put a seed coat down, and we put chicken manure down, and we put a product called Biomentum down, which is supposed to, it's all organic, all certified organic stuff that's I don't even know what's in some of this stuff. I really don't, except that that's supposed to stimulate the microbes and get everything to work. I don't know. But then I've talked to, I just called a couple of them this morning and said, so how do I know, if I've done any good? How do I know? All right, so these 3 root balls here, I just dug them this morning, are from my cornfields, different places. And that root ball there is from the neighbor's cornfield. And it's really not fair. I mean, these are irrigated, all right? This is dry land, but it's right across the fence, okay? So I mean, it's the same soil, same dirt. I can spit from one side, to the other. It's the same dirt. This didn't have water, but it had lots of chemicals and conventional fertilizer, and that's a pretty good ear. You notice there's a pretty good ear there. But there's the root ball, and the guys, all the people that help me say, look at your root ball. Look at your root ball. You're looking for roots. And I called the guy. I got a product. It cost me $4,000 to cover this with this one product that went out through the drip, and it was to send fungi babies, whatever stuff, out through the drip. And the fungi is what as the roots, when the roots finally get so small you can't see them, it just adds a little bit more, and that's where it's feeding the plant, and the fungi just adds to that root's capability to get the good stuff where we're trying to grow an ear of corn. So these are big root balls. I mean, you start breaking them away, and they go down deep. So they said that's your barometer. If you have great big root balls, then the seed coat and what you're doing is the right thing. All right, there it is, folks. I mean, you can break them apart and roll them around, but it is interesting if you like little things about corn growing. Like, see this right here. I dug it like this because I don't know why this seed, but it was late, obviously getting started. But your biologist will call this a weed right here. Okay. You want all your corn to come up within like 2 days, like out of the ground in 2 days. And this guy probably was day 4 or 5. And he didn't do very good, and all he did was suck stuff out of this one. So that's a weed, and here's another one right here. Okay, so that's really what you want to see, and that's why you pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a good corn planter, so that it can put these seeds, boink, 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 and you don't get this kind of thing. But we still have a pretty good ear up there. And if you look at that ear, it's about the same. I mean, the ears are, now I haven't peeled them back. I'm going to say that ear probably isn't filled out to the tip like this one is. I don't understand everything I know about this. Any questions about it? I would try to answer. I could give you all kinds of phone numbers.
Do you do a lot of tillage, no tillage, half tillage?
I am a tiller. I till. Yeah, we were talking. Rotary hoe is a. How many know what a rotary hoe is? Yeah. Okay, that to me is your number one tool for row crops, your beans and your corn. And that's a wheel. They're real close together. Ours is like 30 foot long, and it just goes around like this in the dirt and just stirs it up. So it takes that top inch of dirt and really weeds it for you. That's what it does. And that's where it's so many of your weeds. You get a rain, what do you see? Weeds. If we never got a rain, I wouldn't have a weed problem. Once I plant, the rain starts those weeds right away. So as soon as I plant the corn, and that's where we're trying to raise some farmers here. Okay, I need like 3 or 4 guys behind me. One guy on the rotary hoe, one guy on the planter, and then the cultivator not far behind. We could do all 3 at the same time, even though we're small. So it's just hard, but you need to get in there with the rotary hoe as quickly as you can after you plant. If it rains, bang, you better be on it, because the weeds are going to start right away. You can go out there and start looking in the soil and you'll see the little white hairs, of the weeds starting. those little white hairs turn out to be 6-foot kochia if you don't take care of them. I mean, it's just hard to believe that, but that's the truth. So the rotary hoe, just take those. You won't even see a weed, but they'll stir that up, and those won't even start. And then as soon as that corn's tall enough so that you can go slow and cultivate, we'll cultivate. And really, it seems like I've cultivated twice this year, some of it, but I never got it all cultivated twice. Probably should have. All the rains, weeds got started this year that I haven't had in the past because we really had a wet year. But then after the cultivator, we're done. But again, before you plant the corn, I feel like I got a 2-day window. Like I'll probably disc it, and then I'll use sweeps right before I plant. But if it rains or something and I didn't get it planted, I'll sweep it again. I mean, I just try to. I don't want to plant after a rain. It's always a disaster. The weeds get the jump on you every time. You just got to be. You got to think like a weed, I guess. I don't know, but they're there. They're there. So you got about a 2-day window you got to field black, plant it, and then 2 days later start rotary hoeing.
Did you say anything about cover crops yet? Like what?
No, but right, okay. So cover crops, I'm a believer. Don't get me wrong. We've disked all this, but there's enough. Some of this we planted sunflowers and radishes and stuff into the stubble, and then we disked it so that it got planted. And if it rains and it doesn't get cold, that stuff that is what keeps the microbial action going in the soil. Story, Blaine Schmaltz. I put my gloves on so that I could break this apart and get you guys all dusty, right? And anyway, so that's Blaine Schmaltz. But his story is when he was in his 30s, he was in the hospital 2 or 3 times a year and farming with his dad. Something had happened, and the doctor finally told him, you got to get off the farm because it's the chemicals that are doing it to you. So he was faced with quitting farming. So he didn't quit farming, he quit using chemicals. What a concept. And that's how he became organic. But he took me out to a field, and of course he's got the jump on me. I spent 20 years in the Air Force, and he spent 20 years learning how to farm, which I'm trying to, he shared a lot of that. But it was a field that he'd planted beans in, and this is the fall, and so the bean residue was there from the harvest. And he just parted the residue, and bang, there's the earthworms were like just right there. And he said, Mark, he said he believes he's got a regenerative farm. And he took me to 2 or 3 fields, and they all were like that. Just like the biologists will say, now this was wet, and this is supposed chocolate cake. They say it should look like chocolate cake and feel like chocolate cake. As soon as this gets dry, it gets pretty hard. I mean, but when you first dig it up, this is pretty nice, but it's not. There's no earthworms here. There are some places, but I'm not bragging I got earthworms. But here's his story. Way back when he first started, because he grew into a farm and the farm was there, he started planting 5, 6, 7 different kinds of crops in the same field. Okay, at the same time, things that he knew or thought would be compatible, and things that he could clean. And they had grain cleaners, so he cleaned his own seed, and he got all those 3, 4, 5, 6 different crops separated and sold them. All right, but he did that year after year after year, and he believes that is exactly what it takes to get your soil. He said he doesn't use chicken manure anymore. He said he's got his dirt basically doing the deal, and it's amazing. It's just amazing. So I'm all about cover crops.
Does he ever use like a blend of cover crops?
Yeah, he does. Absolutely. But my point is, he was using cover crops to grow things to sell. In other words, to make a living. He wasn't growing cover crops. He was growing corn, he was growing wheat, he was growing beans, he was growing, whatever was barley. He's got, and the fact that he grew in the same field, 5 to 6 to 7 different kinds of things at the same time, over a period of time, something happens in your soil that makes it powerful. It's God's way. I miss the cows. Yeah, that's the icing. We haven't. This is like the second year we haven't had cows.
And you might not even have to own them.
True. That's true. Might have a friend that has cows, right? I've got 150 acres of corn that I'd love to have some cows in it.
Wheat is forage.
Right. It is. So now that's another input that I have when I take the corn off this big old corn stalk here, then it gets broken up a little bit, but I spray something on there that's it's an organic solution that sends little microbes to work to digest this quicker than it would if I just left it lay there to get the digestion of it going. But if I had some cows eating it and pooping it out, that would save me some trouble. Yeah.
And we have done that in the past.
Yes, we have.
But just not in the recent years. We don't have
Well,
our own cows
yeah.
anymore.
I keep, it's that Toby Keith song, I'm not as good as I once was, you know. I used to be able to do cows and farm, but not anymore.
Do you have a source for the chicken manure, or are you able to produce enough?
No, we don't produce our own.
Okay.
No, yeah, California. It came, this year it came from California, because they had, it's always something, isn't it? But they had avian flu it was coming from Wisconsin before, and no chickens. So it came from California, and it comes composted in a pellet. So I can spread it with my old fertilizer spreader. Yeah. But it comes with a price.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it comes with a price.
Yeah. Right. But so again, like I said, I'm not where Blaine Schmaltz is. But as far as where I would want to be, you know, if there was an easy button, that's what I do. So we just got to. I know what we're doing is right. You know, in terms of. So when you talk about cover crops, part of it is the seed that came out of the back end of the combine. You know, it's also in there in that mix, and it'll turn up and get green, and it'll grow until it freezes this fall. So, and then I put clover in with the wheat when I planted it, and I mean sometimes that's a crapshoot because I plant the wheat really thick because I don't want the weeds to grow, but I put clover in there too. Just if there's a bare spot, I'd rather have a piece of clover than a weed. So, and I think that helps. And then you know we've got peas and radishes that are we just dump them in stuff when we're planting. Yeah.
Try to have a cover crop in with your corn rows at all?
I have put clover in the corn. Okay, but truthfully, I have not done a cover crop with my corn. Not that much. No.
I know there's people that are trying to fly it on and stuff, but there's every area.
Yeah.
It's the water, you get the rain.
Right.
Here you've kind of helped solve that problem.
Yeah, and that's kind of my excuse. I know I'm going to run out of years here. It's just the water. It's amazing what's going on out there now that I never saw before, and it's got to do with the water. And some of it is just really disheartening. When you go home, you go a mile and then you turn north and you look at that field on your left, and that's an 80 acres. And that 3 years ago, after I harvested my corn, I had circles of Canadian thistle in there from one end to the other, and they got going, you know, while the corn was growing and doing its thing, done cultivating, and dang, that has been a war. The next year, it was worse, and I didn't hardly raise anything, and then that fall I planted rye, got it from Blaine. And the rye, last year I had rye that was like right at my nose. And then if you looked hard, the Canadian thistle was right there too. Right there. Yeah. And it grew, I'm 5.5 feet tall. I mean, it was pushing 6 feet, some of it. But the Canadian thistle but the rye really made it fight. So we actually harvested a rye crop, and so then this year, I said, what do I do, Blaine? He said, well, because it was growing up, it was coming up again along with the rye this spring, a volunteer rye, and he said, just mow it off and no-till millet into it, or milo, either one. So I no-tilled, I did that. I went and bought a mower, got rid of the mower with the cows, you know, it went with the trade, again, it's that window thing. We didn't get it mowed and then no-tilled in right away because we were trying to mow and I was getting off and on tractors, and I got help. The two farmers are 9 and 10, so their attention span isn't 8 hours quite yet. They want to be there, but you know what I mean. So anyway, long story short, that Milo just fought and fought and fought, and it just wouldn't come. It even rained, you know, afterwards, and the thistle just took it out. I mean, it just. So then I mowed again a strip with the bat wing. And you'll see it when you go. If you look, if you study, you'll see, and the thistle did not come back, and now the Milo is coming, and it's too late. I mean, hello Milo. It was, you know, winter's coming, but that Milo's going to do something yet. It's actually shot some little spears up, and there's an ugly little thing we're going to call a head on there, but that's the thistle. I'm just saying it's a battle. So this spring we're gonna You got to just shut me off when it's time. But when we put this drip in 19, that field right on the other side of the trees was an alfalfa field, and we tilled it, and then we planted corn, and then the following year, that's the one thing, the company that does this, they come back in the spring and start us up. Okay, when they turned the water on and started pumping, we came home from town. I'll never forget. I just about cried. We looked out there, and it looked like kind of like Yellowstone National Park. There were just water squirting up out of the ground everywhere on the whole 80. The neighbors were calling, "What happened in your field?" And the pocket gophers just literally ate that tape up in that one year, that one spring. The first year we irrigated, and because they lived in the alfalfa, they flourish in alfalfa, and the bill just to patch those drips 4 years ago was $17,000, and I'm going, this ain't gonna work. You know, it's gonna eat me up here. And Kurt Grimm, he canceled the bill. He said, if you ever make any money, you can pay me then. Anyway, he's a saint too. So I said, no alfalfa. But that was a big part of our rotation. I mean, organically, if you plant a field of alfalfa for 3 years and then plow it down, you will not have, I don't care what you plant, you will not have a weed that first year you plant that alfalfa field. It's just beautiful. You can pick your crop. You will have no weed problems for a year, and then they'll start creeping back. Well, I've got to plant alfalfa on top of that Canadian thistle. That's the only thing. It's either that or go back or take it out of the program and spray like crazy. And I mean, just think about that. That is defeat, total defeat, because then the next field's going to be Canadian thistle, and the next field, and the next. Well, we got to figure out a way to win here. Well, okay, so here, I'm figuring I'm going to pray pretty hard, okay? But I've been told by the experts here now that this is our 5th year of drip, that if we keep that field wet, they'll move out. They won't move in if we keep it wet. Because when you're doing this many acres, you can't have water going everywhere. We can do 80 acres at a time. Okay, there's 34 zones out there, about 15 acres each, roughly, and that allows us to do basically 180 at a time. 5 zones is about 75 acres. Okay, so that's how we do our watering. Now this year, we were without a controller for 2 years, and I was doing zones manually. And this year they got us back online with another controller, and you can actually you can program, you know, a zone here, a zone there, a zone here, like that. So there's different ways to do it, but 5 or 6 zones is all you get. But I think what we need to do, I know what we need to do. That field needs to become a priority in our rotation as we water, and we water 12-hour shifts. We water 12-hour shifts. So we can, every 12 hours, we put down a 1/4 of an inch somewhere. So like every second day, we got to be watering that field. And if we're growing alfalfa, it'll probably be used anyway. But that, I'm going to fight them with water. We'll see if we can make that work. They do drip. They're out of Kansas. I just went online. Milt Morris, he had a meeting about drip like in 96, 97.
He's here. He's a local.
Yeah, and he would have been a local guy. But then when I was finally ready to do drip, he wasn't ready to do drip. And so it didn't come together. So I went online, and a couple, 3 people responded. I just picked this company here, and I made about 30 friends. They're just great. Brings his family, and they're just wonderful. Yeah. Well, okay. So when we did when we did drip here on this 25 acres, that's like an L. It's over here, and then it comes around. I had him put a a line. The main line is across the road over there that's always charged with water. But as we go from zone to zone, there's not water in all the lines. So I wanted a hot line in here so that we could have water from the lake. Anytime the pump was running, we would have water under pressure here that we could water with. And so this is just an example of where we've got a garden hose hooked. This is water coming. Now the pump's off now. We haven't irrigated since the 1st of September. And this is the first time I've really been in my cornfield. Those were plumb wet. I got to go back out there with the probe. It's possible we may start back up again for the corn just to make sure we can fill out the ears and do what we want to do. But it was really handy to have, now we've got these guys along that side of the trees and actually along the road that goes down there to that lot. And my thought was this could all become a gardening area, okay? And those are, whenever I'm pumping, which is really, we pump May, June, July, and August. 4 months we run 24/7. Now that's a big electric bill. But these lines then they're just like Mid-Dakota Water, they're on, they're hot. And then, so everything we do in here is water directly from the lake then, which it's kind of like, I feel like I'm not having to pay for it, kind of, but I guess I am. What?
You don't have a water, electric, not for that, right?
No water bill. That's true. Do you want to know that story? Really, really quick. When you get, okay, Dad had water rights down here already, but that was back in the 70s, and a lot of irrigators found that irrigation wasn't the happy story that it was made up to be. Anyway, Dad almost went broke. You're trying to irrigate, which I don't think about that. Dad's pump site was there, which was right above the high water line, and of course the system we designed. I remember when I was, again, I was just getting out of high school and I went to college, but when I came home from college, we were irrigating, and we chased the water with a pump on wheels, and then it went into pipe that went into the ground and up the hill. But at the water's edge, that lake is a moving target. So, and that was no small deal. I mean, with 200-foot lift, you got like over 100 pounds of pressure on that pump. I mean, you have. We had some horror stories. What?
What horsepower is that pump?
There's 2 pumps. There's a submersible out in the water. It was put in 45 feet of water with a line that comes up to the booster pump, it's called, and I want to say it's 150 horse electric. It burns a lot of electricity, and it pushes it up the hill. But the idea is that down there now we just throw switches, no chasing the water. Now the lake's been dropping ever since, and there's still 15 to 20 feet over top of the submersible, and that's good. But yeah.